Can a moment and a feeling be captured for all time? How did the poignant half-light of the blue hour lead to a premonition, the sense that something is about to be lost forever, and the creation of the greatest perfume in the world? This is a story of how a brilliant perfumer used his skills to emulate the genius of great painters, to replicate an instant in time and space. Guerlain describes L'Heure Bleue as a legend of eternal love filled with blue-toned iris and violet, intoxicating in its top note, filled with the boldness of anise and the freshness of bergamot. At the heart of this scent is a delicate and sensual neroli incarnation accord. Its ambery, powdery base becomes all the more seductive thanks to a powdery iris note, gourmand vanilla, benzoin, and tonka bean. As so often in a thing of beauty, this perfume is so much more than the sum of its parts. The name of the perfume suggests a smoky, diffuse blue, and a feeling of poignant reflection. In his poem Bavarian Gentians, D.H. Lawrence writes of the effect of the colour blue. Torch flower of the blue smoking darkness, Pluto's dark blue days, black lamps from the halls of Dis, burning dark blue, giving off darkness, blue darkness, as Demeter's pale lamps give off light. Lead me then, lead me the way. The blue notes of L'Heure Bleue are the key to the perfume's creator Jacques Guerlain's dreamy meditation. That iris and violet have blue tones is appropriate, but really the blueness is miraculously achieved by a unique coolness, something akin to the freshness of menthol. Yes, I did say menthol, which is warmed by a subtle cinnamon clove spiciness, which gives comfort to the coolness, while powdery gourmand notes give a sort of cheer. As always with great fragrances, a lot of things are happening at once. Menthol notes may seem surprising, others have noted a medicinal element, but the note is layered with something akin to caramel baked goods. Think warm, slightly jammy pastry. In my young days, and for my sins, I used to smoke an American menthol cigarette, Bel Air. L'Heure Bleue sometimes reminds me of the flavour, mixed with an edge of cinnamon and cardamom. In fact, everything is blended so expertly that the perfume is almost seamless. L'Heure Bleue is both plush and refined. These are subtle notes, beautifully combined with the florals. There is sexiness and creaminess too. There is plenty of orange blossom after all. The perfume is cooled by anise and the scent sweetens over time, finally revealing its oriental vanilla heliotrope ending. The violet, iris and carnation are marvellous together, but really everything is in its place and harmonious. Here is evidence of a perfume obsession. Many different bottles of L'Heure Bleue, everything from pure parfum to eau de cologne. The oldest is perhaps 60 years old. All of them recognizable as the same fragrance and an echo of a single moment. This is the rosebud bottle from the post-war period, containing parfum. It's sprightly and a little lighter than the modern formulations. Here is something from the 50s and 60s. This particular bottle has L'Heure Bleue eau de cologne. This is a parfum from this century. It's wonderful to say the least. The iconic inverted heart bottle was used for the first time in L'Heure Bleue. It was designed by Jacques Guerlain's brother Raymond and executed by Georges Chevalier at Baccarat. I come back to this perfume time and time again. This is a parfum de toilette, the strength somewhere between EDP and parfum from the early 80s. This is a real favourite with lots of the menthol note and very rich. And here are 3 EDPs, all from this century, about 5 years apart. This is the oldest, and I have to say this one from a few years ago smells the best. It's strong with lots of violet. The explanation for the improvement is no doubt down to the work of Terry Vassar, who during 2021 and 2022 worked on classic Guerlain fragrances, with the aim of enhancing their quality and dealing with IFRA restrictions. I should add that I think it's ridiculous that restrictions were ever placed on materials like oat moss and eugenol, which are cornerstones in perfumery. If a fragrance doesn't suit you, just wear something else. There are, after all, countless thousands to choose from. Lastly, here is something of a L'Heure Bleue flanker, L'Heure de Nuit from 2012, in this delightful bee bottle. The colour of the brew has dulled a little. I'm glad that there's a lot left because it does fade rather quickly. Much of the violet in L'Heure Bleue has been replaced by heliotrope here, and there's some sandalwood in the base. It's a lovely thing, and I was lucky to get it. To say that L'Heure Bleue is the essence of a single moment somewhat undersells its importance and value. The perfume, which originated in 1912, has been a commercial success that's been treasured by thousands of women over the years. It's a delicious and romantic creation that appeals to many who have never heard the perfume story or of its creator, Jacques Guerlain. Considered one of the most prolific and influential perfumers of the 20th century, Jacques Guerlain was born in France in 1874. His uncle Aimé Guerlain trained Jacques from the age of 16 as his apprentice and successor. At the age of 20, Jacques joined the Guerlain family business. In 1897, he assumed joint ownership of his family's company, shared with his brother Pierre and father Gabriel. In 1905, Jacques finished Après L'Onde, which, despite the newspaper La Liberté describing it as melancholy, was his first commercial success. Après L'Onde was the result of Guerlain's experiments with heliotrope and violet. The synthetics heliotropin for heliotrope and ionones for violet were first synthesized at the end of the 19th century. Both notes are, of course, elements of L'Heure Bleue also. Jacques Guerlain added other notes in a strikingly original and creative way, the anisite aldehyde eugenol and generous quantities of orris or iris. Guerlain's work on Après L'Onde provided a basis for the creation of L'Heure Bleue, but it was another even earlier fragrance whose influence is perhaps greater, Coty's L'Ouragan from 1905. Here is a small bottle of L'Ouragan, probably from somewhere between the 1940s and the early 60s. L'Ouragan has been off the market for some time, and apparently the products sold under its name towards the end of its commercial life were distinctly inferior. I can tell you that this version of L'Ouragan is quite lovely. The fragrance was created by François Coty. Coty, like Jacques Guerlain, was born in 1874. He was a Corsican whose birth name was Sporturno. Coty moved to Paris for work and there met the chemist Raymond Guéry, a pharmacist who made and sold perfume at his Paris shop. Coty continued his perfume training at the Kirish factory in Grasse. In 1903, Coty began work on La Rose Jacqueminot, which became a sensation. 2 years later, L'Ouragan, which is French for the herb oregano, in fact it smells nothing like the herb, was launched on an unsuspecting world. This was another sensation, which reinforced the tremendous success of the house of Coty. François Coty was a great perfumer and a genius at business. His creations were wonderful originals that broke new ground in combining fragrance materials. He worked with the best in their fields, such as Lalique and Léon Bakst, who designed the air-spun powder boxes for Coty. Here are a couple of examples of the air-spun powder boxes. They're things of beauty in themselves. François Coty's business philosophy was striking and simple. He said, "Give a woman the best product to be made, market it in the perfect flask, beautiful in its simplicity, yet impeccable in its taste. Ask a reasonable price for it, and you will witness the birth of a business, the size of which the world has never seen." François Coty went on to become one of the richest men in France. When I smell this vintage L'Ouragan, the connection to L'Heure Bleue is quite apparent, but they are cousins, not twins, with very different characters and shading. L'Ouragan is much sunnier, warmer, and spicier. There is a Concord grape smell which comes from something called methyl anthranilate. Like L'Heure Bleue, there is orange blossom, carnation, vanilla, and woody violet, but there's also a pronounced worldly vetiver note. There is breezy immediacy about L'Ouragan that's very different from the poetic, romantic otherworldliness of L'Heure Bleue. The warm and spicy L'Ouragan has a deep and ambery feel, in contrast to the blue-grey mauve of L'Heure Bleue. Intriguingly, the Guerlain website says Après L'Onde and L'Heure Bleue share one thing in common, an oregano chord composed of orange blossom, violet, clove, and vanilla. Oregano again. Après L'Onde was notable for its use of heliotropin, the almond cherry pie floral note. It's blended with iris, which gives refinement and powderiness. The melancholy feel of the scent is persistent. Après L'Onde means after the shower. Think cool rain-drenched flowers in the spring. But the pale sadness that characterizes the fragrance might make you think of tears rather than raindrops. There is something beyond reach about this fragrance. It is romantic and somehow suggestive of yearning, a cerebral poet's scent. Here are a couple of bottles of Après L'Onde Eau de Toilette. This one is from about 2003, and this from around 2021, probably also worked on by Terry Vassar. To me, the more recent is lovelier, with greater lucidity and more violet. For a while, Après L'Onde does literally smell wet or damp. I actually detect damp cardboard with a hint of rubbing alcohol initially, but don't let that put you off. That is in the EDT version, the only form I could ever find. For years I wondered what Après Londe X-ray would be like. How would this almost ghost-like floral take on a more solid form? No Guerlain boutique ever carried it, and then one day I went to a perfumery just off the Piazza del Duomo in Milan. There I asked about Après Londe, and a very helpful vendeuse brought out a price list and informed me that Guerlain would supply a litre of parfum for around €1,000 plus shipping. I was actually tempted, but thought of all the other things I wanted to get in Milan. Then about 10 years ago, I managed to obtain some parfum of Après Londe on eBay, and my view of the fragrance changed forever. I now have a couple of these small X-ray sprays, which are probably from the 80s or 90s. They're still quite full and very precious to me. If ever there could be a rival for my affection for L'Heure Bleue, it would be Après Londe Parfum. The notes are certainly more powerful, and of this earth. It is deliciously legible, with everything turned up, especially the sensational violet, which is not at all sugary. This is an old perfume bottle used for Après Londe, another thing of beauty. The parfum is wonderfully balanced by a savoury herbal hawthorn note. It's somewhat intellectual and serious. I have read that Karl Lagerfeld wore the fragrance. This is an appropriate scent for a serious artistic individual. Lagerfeld was an industrious person who immersed himself in beauty, but was not frivolous. I like another adjective I've heard used for Après Londe, Garbo-esque. And now let's look at the story behind the exquisite ambery powdery floral L'Heure Bleue itself. This perfume came to define the end of the Belle Epoque, the period immediately before World War I. The legend of how the fragrance came into being is part of perfume folklore. Jacques Guerlain himself described the moment he came across the blue hour himself. The sun has just set, but night hasn't yet fallen. Time is suspended. In a moment when man finally finds himself in harmony with the world and with light. Walking along the Seine at dusk, Guerlain became aware of the beauty of the Paris sky. I felt something so intense that I could only express it in perfume. Philippe Guerlain, Jacques' great-nephew, says, Paris before the First World War must have been a very different place than today. L'Heure Bleue captures the lazy feeling of those summer days when twilight turns the atmosphere blue. It's a symbol of the Belle Epoque, that peaceful twilight before the terrible storm of the First World War. In fact, Jacques said that he had a premonition of the calamity that was about to happen. Consider the statement, I felt something so intense that I could only express it in a perfume. Perfume allows us to share some of the perfumer's own experience, the atmosphere, and the feelings felt. Scent brings us memories in a fraction of a second. Our response is beyond language. We are aware in an instant of a person, a place, or a time. What follows is an emotion, all of this beyond words. The world that created L'Oregan, Après Londe and L'Heure Bleue was a place where customers demanded something beautiful, transporting and extraordinary. The demand was for quality, novelty and craftsmanship. In fashion, the theatre, and in the new world of moving pictures, the vogue was for the dramatic and the elevated. The search was on for glamour and the sublime. In the field of art, the Impressionists had atomized the world, better to capture light and line in a moment of spontaneous technique, while the Cubists rearranged objects to see them afresh and from many angles at once. Jacques Guerlain was fascinated and influenced by the Impressionists and their skill at capturing a moment in time by harnessing the play of light. Between 1892 and 94, Claude Monet made a series of paintings of the facade of Rouen Cathedral. In 1895, he exhibited 20 of his works, showcasing the front of the cathedral in different conditions of light, weather, and atmosphere. These works do not focus on the elaborate medieval structure, but on the play of light and shade across its surface, which transforms the solid masonry. The changing light and the time of day are captured on the canvases. We see the bright light of midday, the fading light, the golden hour, and finally the crepuscular blue hour. These paintings capture fleeting moments and preserve them. What does the perfumer have in common with the visual artist? It's the ability to make an artifact that can recreate the human emotional response to an event. Monet captures the exact moment the sun's light hits Rouen Cathedral in particular atmospheric conditions. His paintings show a moment that actually happened, and now we can see it in Monet's painting forever. Jacques Guerlain used fragrance materials to recreate the famous moment he walked along the Seine at dusk. Captured, too, was something of what Guerlain himself felt, the appreciation of the beauty of the light at dusk, and a premonition of doom, perhaps with the longing to suspend time itself before the gentle, decorous Paris of the Belle Epoque was lost to the chaos of war. The artist and perfumer have the power to evoke the non-linguistic human response to nature, the welling of emotion and the delight we feel when we see a beautiful sunrise or twilight. When you look at a great painting or smell a magnificent perfume, a great many thoughts and memories are brought to mind at once. In the moment, we don't use words to create the response. The mind draws together images, memories, and feelings. Pleasure or perhaps displeasure is felt. To be sure, the perfumer also wants to make money and create a successful endeavor. It's also true that the perfumes I'm discussing are some of the best of the best. That's why they've survived. Inevitably, long ago, there must have been countless duds and endless cheap, conventional scents. A great advantage for the perfumer of the past is that it was easier to break new ground in a field that was more open, and where a plethora of novel fragrance materials were newly available. Of course, there are very many new fragrance materials available today, and the market has expanded. The desire to make beautiful fragrances has not gone away, but it's telling that the niche perfume market is where people expect to find great fragrances today. In fact, they may be more likely to find quality rather than greatness. The question is, where are the great fragrances of the mass market? Jacques Guerlain's creations Après L'Onde, L'Heure Bleue, Mitsuku, Shalimar, Ode, Liu, Vol de Nuit and Vega among them, changed not only the world of perfumery, but given their huge appeal to women and men everywhere, the wider world itself. 20 years ago, my work took me regularly to Harrods, where I heard about a new luxury perfume room. Located at the top of the store, accessed by an escalator which was almost hidden away, I discovered the loftily named Haute Parfumerie. The luxurious salon didn't disappoint, especially when I was greeted by the creator of the project himself, Roger Dove. He emerged from a canopied daybed, dressed in a kind of smoking jacket, clearly in his element, surrounded by elegant displays, including Caron perfume fountains and reproductions of Dior fragrances from the 1940s. Dove began telling me about his years at Guerlain. He told me about his love for L'Heure Bleue, and how Après L'Onde was a kind of precursor. All of Dove's anecdotes were interesting. He said that L'Heure Bleue was still very much treasured by the people at Guerlain, that it was the last great perfume produced before the First World War, and that its composition was strange, as there are almost no top notes. Dove very kindly sent me a sample of Poivre by Caron, and told me that I should wear Tabac Blonde. Perhaps I should have taken his advice. The significance of memory and scent, perfume's capacity to conjure up a place and time, is well known. Apparently the olfactory bulb sends signals directly to the areas of the brain responsible for emotions and memory. My father's sister wore 2 memorable fragrances when I was a child. I used to play on her kitchen floor and watch her dusting her place. I recall the perfumes only as delicious smells. Now I think her choices were very elegant. For years she wore L'Heure Bleue, and when it came out in 1971, she moved over to Chanel No. 19. My aunt used to smoke a cigarette on her tea break, and I remember the tobacco smoke blended surprisingly well with L'Heure Bleue. Scent memory can prove remarkably persistent. I once had to travel from Malpensa Airport near Milan. The airport is about an hour's car ride from the centre of Milan, and it's not a particularly smart place. Queuing at check-in, I was stuck behind an Italian lady of a certain age, dressed in a smart Prince of Wales check suit, pushing her tan luggage with a Max Mara coat slung over her arm. I never got a good look at her face, but she reeked of elegance and radiated a delicious cloud of L'Heure Bleue. The effect of the fragrance completely altered the dull task and the surroundings. The magic of L'Heure Bleue has been catnip to many gorgeous, iconic women. 2 dazzling French actresses, Catherine Deneuve and Isabelle Adjani, have worn the fragrance. These 2 alone demonstrate that the Victorian favourites Heliotrope and Violet are not only for the prim and unemancipated. With Deneuve and Adjani, it's hard to know where to start. Obviously, they are prodigious talents, great actresses, who are genuine stars. They've endured to create brilliant and diverse bodies of work. Their extraordinary beauty has been matched by their tremendous work and capacity to give everything in a performance. Both actresses can be called romantic, like L'Heure Bleue, but their style is profound and sexy, characteristics shared by the fragrance too. They both played everything from objects of desire to ambivalent heroines and deranged murderers. They're also utterly unique. L'Heure Bleue has been a favourite too of Julia Roberts and Liza Minnelli, also the composer Lionel Bart, who scented himself and his house with it. Most famous of all was Queen Elizabeth II, who chose it as her favourite. There's something intriguing and pleasing to discover that a woman, known for her discipline and sense of duty, appreciated this beautiful romantic scent. A good perfume must be well composed. It must stand out and it must sell. Pricey as they are, perfumes are the most affordable of luxury goods. It's edifying to know that L'Heure Bleue will smell just as good whether you're living paycheck to paycheck or you're worth $1 billion. The great perfumes break new ground, become a leader of their type. The greatest must offer more than the smell itself. It must be a wonder whose reputation abides and grows. It must transmit the purpose and meaning of the perfumer in a way that language cannot. It must stand alone as something of value for all time. Has any perfume achieved this dazzling enterprise better than L'Heure Bleue? Let me finish with a story from Joan Juliet Buck of Paris Vogue, who wore L'Heure Bleue. She was told by an elderly screenwriter who worked in the golden days of Hollywood that she looked like the beautiful film star Hedy Lamarr. However, she explained, L'Heure Bleue had created a mirage. I smelt like Hedy Lamarr looked.